My name is Eliza Hart. I'm 27 years old. And if you think abandonment kills the soul, wait until you see what silence can resurrect. It started with a text. 4 plain sentences that split my world in half. We need space from you. Please don't reach out anymore. At all. I stared at the words until my phone blurred. My parents, my own blood, were cutting me out like a tumor. No argument, no explanation. Just exile, served with casual cruelty. And as if to drive the blade deeper, my uncle showed up the next day. No shame, no hesitation. He packed their things, loaded their car, and slammed the trunk shut as if he was closing a coffin on our relationship. That was their choice. Their freedom. Their final word. So I gave them mine. Of course. I'll cancel my direct deposits first thing. My thumbs trembled as I pressed send. Not from grief. Not anymore. From clarity. Because I realized in that moment they weren't parents. They were parasites. Feeding on me, draining me, calling me trash, while cashing in every cent I'd worked myself bloody for. By midnight, the begging began. Calls. Messages. And then headlights sweeping across my driveway as they arrived, faces twisted in panic. The same voices that had spit me out were suddenly frantic, desperate, clinging to the money they thought was endless. I stood by the window, lights off, heart steady. And for the first time in my life, I didn't open the door. I didn't justify myself. I didn't explain. I just smiled in the darkness and let them drown in the silence they had demanded. But that was only the beginning. Because what happens when the family who erased you learns you were the one holding their lifeline all along? And what happens when you decide to cut it forever? The morning after their dramatic arrival, I brewed my coffee slow, letting the sound of the machine drown out the buzzing of my phone. Missed calls. Dozens. Messages stacked like unpaid bills. Sweetheart, we didn't mean it that way. You misunderstood. We were upset. Can we talk? Please. Each one read like theater scripts. No apology. No acknowledgement of the years they called me useless, of the dinners where my sister was praised like royalty while I was served as the family's punchline. Just manipulation, dressed in desperation. I scrolled back, rereading that text. Please don't reach out anymore. At all. The clearest request they'd ever made. And I intended to honor it. The money, that was the real betrayal. For years, I had been funneling part of my earnings into their accounts, quietly covering mortgages, medical bills, even my brother's failed business venture that burned through $60,000 in less than 6 months. They never said thank you. They only asked for more. And now, without those deposits, reality hit them like a storm. Their perfect image was cracking. Their charity dinners suddenly unpaid. Their yacht club memberships dangling on overdue balances. I remembered my mother sneering once. Don't embarrass us, Eliza. Your job is to support the family, not yourself. Support. That was all I'd ever been to them, an ATM with a pulse. But now the card was declined. I watched the ocean beyond my window, calm and endless. My mansion stood tall against the cliffs, every square foot paid for with the work they mocked me for. The same work they told me would never amount to anything. Their world was collapsing. Mine was finally quiet. And yet I knew them. This wasn't the end. They wouldn't fade politely into their poverty. No. They would fight, claw, and beg until there was nothing left to burn. And I was ready for it. Because this time I wasn't the stain. I was the storm. By Friday, the whispers reached me before their voices did. At the country club, where I once sat invisible at their tables, I was suddenly the headline. Ungrateful daughter abandons family. She turned her back on her parents. My aunt even staged a scene in the lobby, her voice pitched for maximum echo. All that money made her heart cold. They thought humiliation would drag me back. They forgot humiliation had built me. Later that night, a letter slid under my gate. No stamp, no envelope. Just a sheet of paper, desperate ink smeared like blood. You don't understand, Eliza. We need you. Without your support, we'll lose everything. The house, the cars, the life we built. I sat in my living room, the ocean roaring against the glass, and laughed. The life we built. They didn't build a thing. They siphoned. They consumed. They polished their image with my sweat and dollars. And then came the bank call. Miss Hart, this is regarding the joint accounts with your parents. There have been multiple overdraft attempts and unusual withdrawals. Shall we freeze them entirely? I felt something electric pulse through me. A chance not just to pull the plug, but to cauterize the wound forever. Yes, I said, my voice steady. Freeze them all. Effective immediately. That night, headlights once again pierced the driveway. Fists pounded against the iron gates. My father's voice cracked through the night air. Eliza, don't do this. We're family. I stayed by the window, untouched. Every cry was a reminder. Every plea was proof. For 9 years, they called me a disappointment, a burden, trash. And now, here they were, reduced to beggars in the shadow of the daughter they erased. But this wasn't revenge yet. This was only the reckoning. The true revenge was still loading. Sunday arrived with theater. My parents knew one language, performance, and so they staged one for me. I woke to a flood of notifications, photos plastered online of my mother, heartbroken, clutching my sister in a staged embrace. Captions read, "Daughter abandons family in their darkest hour." My father gave an interview to a local blogger, spinning tales of sacrifice, how they gave me everything, only to be discarded like yesterday's news. It was laughable, really, because while they painted me as a monster, I had receipts. Years of transfers, bank logs, screenshots of texts where they demanded money and mocked me for daring to keep any for myself. And then, just when I thought their charade couldn't sink lower, I received an invitation. A gala. The same one they'd paraded me through as a child, reminding me to keep quiet and look presentable. This time, I wasn't invited as family. I was invited as a guest of honor. The organizers wanted me to speak. My company had become their biggest sponsor. The irony dripped like honey. So I accepted. That night, while my parents strutted in borrowed clothes, whispering about how they'd handle me, I walked in flanked by security. Cameras turned. The room shifted. The whispers that once crushed me now crowned me. When the host introduced me, the woman who turned grit into gold, who funds the very programs keeping the city alive, I took the stage. I didn't glance at my parents. I didn't need to. Their pale faces said enough. My name, I began, steady and strong, is Eliza Hart. For years, I was told my worth was measured by how much I gave away to people who gave nothing back. Tonight, I stand not as their daughter, not as their scapegoat, but as myself. Independent, unbought, free. The applause thundered. Cameras flashed. And in that moment, the narrative shifted forever. They had tried to bury me in shame, but I had bloomed in public. And for the first time in my life, the room was mine. The fallout was immediate. By the next morning, my inbox overflowed, partnership offers, invitations, messages from people who once ignored me. I had become, overnight, the very thing my parents tried to convince the world I could never be: respected, admired, untouchable. And yet, at the edges of that victory, the vultures circled. My parents called from numbers I didn't recognize. Blocked. They emailed under fake names, pleading for a second chance. Deleted. Then came the stunt. I returned from a board meeting to find them sitting on the hood of my car in the driveway, my mother's lipstick smeared, my father clutching a half-empty bottle of whiskey. Their voices cracked with rehearsed tragedy. "Sweetheart, you can't shut us out," my mother begged. "We're family. We only pushed you because we wanted you to be strong." I stared at them through the iron gates, not moving, not speaking, letting silence do the work. Then her mask slipped. "You think this makes you powerful?" she hissed, teeth bared. "You think cutting us off erases who you are? You'll always be our failure. You'll always be ours." I almost laughed. Ours. That was the last word they would ever own. I walked inside and made a single call to my lawyer. By nightfall, restraining orders were filed. Security was doubled. Their desperate theatrics became trespassing charges. The next day, news broke. Their debts, once hidden under my deposits, had boiled over. Foreclosure notices posted on the gates of the house they'd flaunted as proof of their perfection. Their credit shredded. Their friends evaporated. And when the cameras turned on them, there was no daughter to scapegoat. No savior left to blame. They wanted me invisible. Now they were the ones erased. The collapse came faster than even I expected. Within weeks, their world unraveled like a poorly stitched dress. The house was stripped of furniture, auction signs plastered across the lawn. Creditors hounded them. Friends vanished, and the people who once cheered their cruelty now avoided eye contact in public. I heard whispers, how my mother broke down in a pharmacy, begging the cashier to hold her card just a few more seconds, praying it wouldn't decline. How my father sat alone at a diner, ranting about ungrateful children to strangers who rolled their eyes and moved to another booth. And through it all, I remained silent. No dramatic confrontation. No raised voice. Just distance, firm and final. Until one evening, my doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw them. Thin, hunched, stripped of the arrogance that once filled every room. My mother clutched a stack of papers, foreclosure notices, overdue bills, her hands trembling. My father stood behind her, shoulders sagging, pride finally broken. When I answered, she dropped the papers on the ground. "Eliza," she whispered, her voice raw. "Please help us. We have nowhere else to go." I looked at the bills scattered at my feet. Years ago, I would have bent, absorbed the blow, taken responsibility for the chaos they created. But not anymore. I knelt, picked up a single page, and held it out to her. "You once said my only value was what I could give you," I said softly. "Now you see, I was the only thing holding you up." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't waver. "I'm not your savior," I continued. "I'm not your scapegoat. I'm free." Then I slid the paper back into her hands and stepped inside, closing the door with a quiet finality. Through the glass, I saw them linger, desperate, shattered, unrecognizable. And then, for the first time in my life, I turned off the porch light without guilt. The night swallowed them, and I finally breathed. Freedom is quieter than I ever imagined. Mornings no longer began with frantic phone calls or accusations, but with the sound of ocean waves brushing against the shore outside my balcony. I'd sip coffee on the terrace, sunlight spilling across the water, and marvel at how peace felt like wealth no bank statement could measure. I built a new circle, friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. Colleagues who respected my work, not my silence. A chosen family, stitched together by loyalty and care, not blood and cruelty. Every corner of my mansion reflected a piece of that rebirth. The piano in the corner where I taught myself to play again. The guest rooms filled not with relatives demanding more, but with friends visiting just to laugh and share meals. The garden, wild with color, where I planted things simply because they made me happy. Meanwhile, news trickled in about my parents. Their rental house, small, damp, far from the glittering circles they once worshipped. My mother, rumored to be cleaning houses for the very women she used to mock. My father, spotted at a pawn shop, arguing over a few dollars for a broken watch. They still tried, occasionally, to claw their way back into my life. A letter left in my mailbox. A voicemail that cracked with rehearsed remorse. But the words rang hollow, the same performance recycled, the same manipulation disguised as apology. I didn't reply, because forgiveness isn't owed, it's earned. And they had never once lifted a hand to build, only to take, destroy, diminish. The greatest revenge wasn't screaming in their faces. It was this, waking up every day without them, thriving in a life where their shadows couldn't reach. And sometimes, as I locked the gate at night, I whispered the words they once spat at me with venom. "You're nothing." Except now, the difference was clear. They were. They once told me I was nothing. A burden. A stain. But burdens don't build homes on cliffs above the ocean. Stains don't stand unbroken after years of being torn apart. Nothing doesn't rise into everything they thought I'd never be. The last time I saw them, they stood outside my gate, smaller than I'd ever remembered, their voices weak with pleading. My father's words cracked. "We need you, Eliza. Please." I stared at them through the bars, calm and unshaken. "You needed me when you chose her lies over my truth. You needed me when you laughed as I broke. You needed me when you told the world I was worthless." I shook my head. "But I don't need you anymore." The ocean wind rushed behind me, a symphony of freedom. I turned, walked back toward the house that I had built with my own hands, my own strength, my own scars transformed into steel. No more begging. No more shadows. No more carrying the weight of their cruelty. They taught me once that love was conditional. But I had learned something greater. Self-respect is not. And in that, I found my peace. The night they called me nothing was the night they lost everything. And for once, I wasn't broken. I was free.